everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Movie Overload. It is, I don't know how to explain this podcast. I should have looked at what
Oh, man.
I should have thought about what this podcast is before we started it. That would have helped
a few times.
Yeah?
3 friends, 100 films.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that works.
It's basically.
That's my movie voice.
Yeah, that's a good movie voice.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, so basically, I guess each episode we will go through one film of the 100 central films list through history, trying to gauge a thing. I'm sorry. I want to restart.
I believe in you. No, this is too good.
We're 5 minutes in and I'm done.
We're about 60 seconds in.
Oh, dang. It's felt like so long. Is it hot in here or is it just me?
He's turning red.
No.
Okay. So we just watched
We
for
watched
our first one.
A Trip to the Moon. Do you have the year on that? When that
It's
one was released?
1902.
Ooh, fancy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Just very early. I actually didn't know that there were films before that because I think of the first film of being like in the 1920s, right?
Mm.
The Jazz Singer.
Right. Well,
was like the
that was
first
when it started
big
having
film.
more audio and stuff.
Oh yeah, that was audio. So before that, they were
that
doing
was
other
what
film
projects.
projects. So
Yeah.
I forget about
Some
these.
silent film stuff.
Yeah.
I think I've watched a bunch of Charlie Chaplin movies, so I've seen stuff from like 1915 on.
Mhm.
14 I think is probably when he started. And those were kind of interesting because I did like a marathon of those like a few months ago, and they kind of start off before they like had accompanying like music. So like I guess people would play piano or whatever in the theater.
Mhm.
And then going through time to get to the point where eventually they had actual recorded audio that they stuck with it, just the soundtracks. They didn't do dialogue. And so seeing that progression through film. But like back in 1902, I guess there was just nothing because
Yeah,
there was
no
no
sound.
sound at all. There
Yeah,
wasn't,
at least
there
on the
wasn't even
version we
music.
watched.
There was
Right.
no
Like,
speaker
you can
system
find
to
some, I
share it
guess, that have
anyway.
some, but yeah, probably
Yeah.
originally there was.
They'd probably be added
I guess
later.
there was nothing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder if those would have been like actually written out, like here's the score, here's what you should be playing, or I heard that a lot of them were like kind of just ad-libbing
I think so,
on the
yeah.
spot. Here's just some ragtime music so you're not bored while you're watching something that's completely silent.
So it's
Yeah.
not too
And
quiet.
it was kind of weird watching it with no audio. Like it's a very odd experience because I'm just used to there being something to listen to also while watching something. So
Right.
yeah,
just
not
wasn't
having
anything.
sound was a little uncomfortable.
Very interesting. Mhm. But anyway, Hannah, take us through some of the talking points here of Georges Méliès.
Oof. Okay. Compiled all my notes, so I hope this is interesting. He was super interesting to read about. I really enjoyed it because he was into theater. So he like sold his share in his family shoe company and bought a theater with the money, and he just became an illusionist. So he would just put on these shows, and that was like late
Gotcha.
1800s. And then I'm not sure how he got introduced to cameras and film, but it just said that he started messing with it, and he made over 500 films between 1896 and 1913. So this one was Trip to the Moon was like his 400th film. Yeah, by 1902.
That's just insane.
And they were all short. This one, that was his longest one by that point.
Gotcha.
So
And it was like what, 13 minutes?
12, 13
Yeah.
minutes. Yeah, so not that long. And I guess he'd make like little ads or commercials too. But this one stood out because he was like really known for using special effects, but he wasn't known for having narrative in his film projects. So this one actually had a storyline. So I think that's what made it pop.
Gotcha.
It was like internationally successful, and the U.S. kept pirating it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How would you pirate films like back then? Because, you know, for the longest
have
time,
no
there wasn't even
idea.
like home
Right.
video. We were just talking about that
Yeah.
the other day until like, what, the 80s, really,
Yeah,
probably late
if you're just
70s.
Somehow able to reproduce the reels.
And
I don't know.
I guess
how that
just
would
play
work.
them in your own local theater
I
without
guess.
Yeah,
getting
I guess.
permission.
I don't know.
Huh.
I don't know how that would work.
It
That
just
sounds
made
like a
me
lot of
laugh,
work.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he was French, I believe. Yeah, French illusionist and
Mhm.
film director. And he made up a lot of his own tricks. So the substitution splices,
Mm-hmm.
where it jumps, or the object switch, that was all him.
Dang.
Multiple exposures, time-lapse photography. I think that's probably how they did a lot of the background changes.
Yeah.
It was all time-lapse because he was also a painter. And then dissolves with the film. not quite
right,
sure.
like the crossfades.
Right,
That we're talking about,
And then, hand painted color.
Dang.
He was also one of the first filmmakers to use storyboards.
Hmm. So like, all of the basic film techniques.
Right.
Exactly,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
So
doing all
that's
that
like
really
how it was.
early.
Yeah, so innovative was all the special effects. And it said he was also a huge fan of Jules Verne. And that was like his
That
inspiration for a lot of
makes
his
so much
little
sense.
stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was kind of cool.
Mhm.
And everyone called him a sci-fi person, but now filmmakers say that wasn't sci-fi, it was fantasy.
That's fair, I guess.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, I mean, well, it kind of does fit with like the early definitions of sci-fi, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, because I mean, think of like H.G. Wells and Jules Verne as like
Yeah,
kind of
Jules
sci-fi,
Verne, I think
yeah.
sci-fi. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as like, it's I guess not hard sci-fi. It's not Star Trek or something.
Yeah.
So I guess in that sense,
Right.
no.
Like fundamentally, it's like space travel and
Right.
aliens, and it's like it is sci-fi, but it's framed in a way, I guess, that feels more fantastical.
because it doesn't
in a
have.
way, like
Yeah.
it's so loose, and it's just like it just feels very fun and kind of whimsical. So
Mhm.
it does kind of come off as fantasy.
That yeah,
Right.
More.
and there's some. I mean, there's also kind of. I guess there was magic in the beginning. Did they like somebody
I wasn't
handed
really
them?
sure.
Was that telescopes and they
yeah,
turned
like
into
a
stools?
telescopes.
Yeah.
Yeah, then they were stools.
And they were kind of dressed like wizards. They
I
had
guess
pointy
they-
hats and
yeah.
beards and stuff.
And then they just decided to change out of those.
yeah.
And go to the moon.
And
Yep.
flew through
For a little
space
bit.
in their space bullet.
But man, some of those sets were like incredible.
They were beautiful.
like these gorgeous matte paintings with like all of these different layers up to the camera,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
and then like steam and smoke and that kind of thing coming out
Yeah.
of them, which I
Yeah.
feel like there are matte paintings all the way up through like I don't know, the Dark Crystal,
Right.
other stuff that we'll cover,
Right.
Star Wars, but like those. They don't do other things with them to make them move and that kind of thing that like they were doing in 1902.
Yeah, I think there was one. There was it even looked like it looked like liquid or something going into a pit in the ground or something. I was like,
Yeah, I saw
what
that.
is that?
I think that might
What's
have
happening?
been time lapse.
Hmm.
Would that have been
Probably.
time
Might
lapse?
have
I
just been,
guess
yeah, different
because I think he would use
versions
real
of it.
fire and real smoke.
Yeah, the smoke definitely
Yeah.
looked real.
Man,
kinda like
and they
the
did so
smokestacks
many
and
of
stuff.
those.
Mhm.
Like there's actually like a decent amount of kind of choreography to that in a weird
Mhm.
way because
Yeah.
you have to because at first it just seems kind of spontaneous, but then you realize you have to like stop right there for them to
Mhm.
like add the little
Mhm.
smoke bomb and like
Right.
how I
Add
don't
some
even know
smoke
how you
stuff,
would
yeah.
manage to do all that, but
It was super theatrical, like just the whole way it set up the cast
Right.
and how they moved with each other. I was like, oh, I can totally imagine that rehearsal
Mhm.
with how they probably just did it over and over and over again, and then brought in the physical elements for the special effects.
Right.
yeah,
Just
It makes
filmed it.
sense having like with his skill set, yeah, like in theater and illusion and stuff,
Mhm.
and being like, oh, you gave me the ability to like manipulate time. Cool.
He's like, I'll take it.
See what I can do with that.
It was super cool. I actually wrote this down because it just interested me so much. So the man in the moon, when the
Mhm.
bullet lands in his eye and it comes closer, I guess filmmakers would try to move the camera closer to the actors, but they couldn't do that with the camera equipment. So he changed it and he added the actor and he put him on this chair and covered him with a cloak. And then he made a pulley operated chair. And he would just like slowly really actor towards the camera. And it allowed him,
Whoa.
I wrote it down, yeah. It says it allowed him to control the placement of the face within the frame to a much greater degree of specificity than moving the camera allowed.
That's bonkers.
I know. And I'm like, I would never even think of that. So he was over here like, you idiots, I'll just move the actor, not the camera. But it looked
Yeah.
great.
I mean, I guess that probably would have been before they invented dollies or anything like that,
Mhm.
right? Like, I bet a camera wasn't exactly super
Right.
portable.
Solving those problems
Yeah,
before they were fully solved.
Right.
yeah. Man, that's just really impressive. Like, I remember, like, I've seen this film like a few years ago, and it being the first silent film I think I'd ever seen, and being like, that was interesting. That was just kind of cool, I guess. But then I watched, I watched a bunch of silent films since then, and coming back to this, I'm like, there's techniques in this that like I still didn't see like 20 years, 30 years later in film. Like it's just so before its time. It's just kind of mind blowing. Like it definitely,
Mhm.
I think it does belong on this list for sure because
Yeah, it's so good.
yeah, for the time that it came out, it's just, it's bonkers. Yeah.
There was also the shot with the water.
Oh, right.
Remember when it plunges from the moon back into the
Oh,
ocean?
yeah.
Yeah, so they actually filmed through an aquarium.
Hmm.
He had like the cutouts behind it, and then he had this aquarium with water and fish, and he would put like little props and things in the water.
Oh, okay.
So there were like fragments in it, and then they filmed through it.
Yeah, I was thinking it looked like it looked like silhouettes of fish or something. I was thinking, I was like, that looks real. Like,
Yeah.
that looks like a fish.
I don't know how they filmed through it without
I
it
don't
getting
know.
distorted because it looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, gosh. That must have just. Do you have any idea what the budget was on that in the time?
Yeah, it was like 10,000 euros,
Hmm.
I think, which was a lot.
I would assume back in 1902,
Right.
that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Gosh.
And
There was a lot going on. Lots of different sets. Like, they didn't stay any specific spot for more than a minute or two. It felt
Yeah.
like.
I just feel like they were like, basically designing a new whole set just for each shot
Mhm.
Yeah.
because everything's just framed exactly.
Right.
But yeah, like the cutouts of like the houses like up in the foreground and with the stuff in the background, and then like the shot where they're trying to load the bullet into the gun or
Yeah.
whatever was just really confusing because there's so much going on, and not in the bad way. It was just like it was just hectic with how many different layers of set design and matte paintings and whatever. I just don't feel like I've actually seen that kind of thing before.
yeah, he must have had to work up to that for sure. It says it was his longest film at the time. Both the budget and filming duration were unusually lavish, costing 10,000 euros to make and taking 3 months to complete.
Dang.
That's a long time for a 12-minute
Yeah.
short.
Like I feel like movies now can wrap in like 3 months. Like that's pretty average.
Yeah, they'll film whole series within 2 or 3 weeks for
Dang.
Netflix or Prime.
Really? That's
Yeah.
crazy. That must be so painful
But
as an
just the
actor or
filming
director.
I mean, they can. Yeah, just for
Right.
filming.
There's, I'm sure, plenty more to do.
That's true. I'm not sure about
To
production.
do all the filming and prep and editing
Right.
for something like this.
And
in
I
3
think it's
months,
because with our technology now, we can speed through certain things, but I don't know
Right.
about whole films, though.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But if you think about it, how long, because I read about Greta Gerwig with Little Women, they had like a 2 or 3 month rehearsal and then a 3-month filming time, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 3 months for a film that's over 2 hours, and then this took 3 months for 12 minutes.
Right.
Right.
With rudimentary sets and
Mm-hmm.
editing techniques and all that stuff.
If they had
It's
to
very
paint
nice.
everything and make all the costumes. I
Exactly.
loved the costumes.
Yeah.
They were
cool looking.
really solid. I feel like probably most of his films are lost, right?
Yeah, there's
think
the
so.
whole list, and they're all divvied up by year, and they have all the original titles. And most of them say lost, and then a few survive, and then some are unknown. I don't even know how they have all the titles.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think when I looked at his letterbox listing, there's only like half of those. There's like 250-ish listed on there. So
Really? Okay.
yeah, so I'm assuming a lot of them are just not there. So
Yeah, I wonder about that because, like, I don't know. I was reading recently. Well, I was watching a documentary thing about the making of one of Kurosawa's more recent movies, Kagemusha from 1980, and George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola were on there talking about like how, you know, even in their day, there's like, you know, a movie comes out and then it's gone. And maybe it happens to come back to an art house theater somewhere, or you're in film school, in which case you get to see some films, but otherwise you just don't see a movie once it's out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder, like, I guess it does kind of make sense that they wouldn't be like, you know, making sure that they're storing all of them in these proper places or you know, keeping them for archival purposes because it's
Right.
like, we're not ever putting this out again, I guess.
Right.
So I wonder if A Trip to the Moon, like, has it had an enduring popularity? Do you happen to know? Or was it just one of those things that, like, you know, aired when it came out and then got pirated a bunch in the US
right,
and then fell out of
people liked it.
popularity? And I can't remember if this was the film that was lost at one point and then was like found more recently, or if that's a different one.
That
of
sounds
his.
kind of familiar, but I don't remember reading it about this specific
Not this one.
so I'm
Okay.
not positive. Yeah, I don't know. This one, it just says this one they really picked up because it was just so internationally successful.
So it might have just been big enough that it just
Yeah.
stayed around.
Yeah, it says extensively pirated by other studios, especially in the U.S. Its unusual length, lavish production values, innovative special effects, and emphasis on storytelling were markedly influential on other filmmakers and ultimately on the development of narrative film as a whole.
Right. Because, like, I think the next film on our list is, like, I don't even think we have a film from the 1910s. I think we just go straight to the 20s after this. So there's, like, a good period of 20 years in which the movies that came out after this just are really that worth talking about. So
it kind of sounds like
insane.
they talk about him like he's super, like he just revolutionized it, but most of his films use special effects just for the sake of special effects. Like he was an illusionist and that's just what he did. Storytelling wasn't really his thing.
Right.
So.
And this, I mean, the story is, I always think that's like really shocking with silent films, is just like seeing how easy they are to follow despite the fact that there's no dialogue. Because like, let's see, on Letterboxd, I think I've logged like probably 1,100 movies that aren't silent films. So then like you see one and it's like, oh, I expected this to, one, be really boring, and two, to have no idea what was going on. But this one doesn't even have like those text boxes or whatever. I don't know what those are called, like the slides that come in
or something.
yeah, where like it goes and there's like a bit of dialogue that somebody's saying. Like it doesn't even bother with that stuff because it just lets you follow the narrative. I guess that's probably the origins of show don't tell in film, is if you can follow it. And I've heard a lot of people say that with like writing your film or directing your film, you want to be able to understand what's happening even if there's no audio. If you just entirely take out the dialogue and you don't know what people are saying, you should still know what's going on. And I mean, I guess this would be probably an interesting way to start getting good at that, is by like honestly trying to make silent films now.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of an interesting experiment, I guess.
And there's kind of differences to that too, like doing something like this or like Charlie Chaplin or like something like that, having like there's the stories they're telling are fairly simple. And like you don't need a lot of dialogue always to convey that thing, but I think you could mess it up too. So, and they always do it pretty nicely.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just very physical. You're able to just like, there might not be emotion, but if there is, it's something you can telegraph, I guess, physically. But they're good.
Yeah, because you couldn't see any of them in detail or close up. Like I couldn't really see any of their faces.
Like one of them was like maybe kind of a leader because he had like a bigger beard. Was kind of in the front maybe. But like there weren't generally like characters.
Yeah, which definitely plays back into the theater part because they were all like overacting to display this message, and I liked that there were still parts that were funny. It's like 1902 silent film, and I'm still here laughing at it.
Yeah, there's totally just like physical comedy. Just like sometimes like somebody would like fall over and I'm just like
yeah, it's still funny. And the costumes, that's an interesting note too, because costumes, that goes back, like one having a bigger beard than the others. I mean, that goes back to like Greek theater, as they would just use something like that in size or whatever to symbolize a character. And when you couldn't use audio,
it's weird. I'm kind of amazed that like film kind of carried through without audio, because when you put it next to theater, like the things that I think about film versus theater is that like the nice thing about film is that you can watch it again. You can see it again in your own house. It's pretty easy to just stick on. You don't have to go somewhere, and then it's gone after that. And then at the same time with film, you're also able to like do a bit more narratively, just because you have the ability to cut to other times and places back and forth. You're able to do more with sound and music and whatever. But here, like at the beginning of film, it was way more limited than what you could do with theater at the time, just because the nature of not having dialogue and not having music and all these other things that you would just naturally be able to do with theater makes it like a more limited art form to start out with. Which is just.
And I remember hearing stuff like that, like in that one film class that I took, having like a lot of the early perspective on film kind of being like, you had the camp that kind of Méliès seems to have been in, where it's like, this is something kind of magical and it gives me the ability to manipulate reality in ways that I can't do in real time on a stage. And so I'm going to have a lot of fun with that. Or you had other people who are just like, this is a way to just capture straight reality. And I'm just going to film regular stuff going on. And it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And like that was their thing. So like, I like seeing even earlier examples of just the being like, no, this is just something fun that I can just play around with, and like I can do things here that I can't do anywhere else. So
yeah, because I do like, I go on YouTube every once in a while, and I like, have you ever seen those like remastered like 4K videos of just like people walking down a street in like 1896 that like somebody set up a camera to film? Like they have those sorts of things up on YouTube, and I look at those all the time. But yeah, I guess it would have been a later type thing to be like, oh yeah, I can actually manipulate reality with this. Yeah, it takes a bit of extra thought and time.
Yeah, I think they're both valuable, and yeah, probably. I mean, it takes someone with that imagination and innate creativity, I think, especially with something like that being brand new. And, you know, you had like photography where you're just like, well, what am I going to do with photography? Take pictures of people, places, and things. It's like, oh, well, now you have moving photography. Like, I'll just do the same thing. I will record on film a train pulling into a station. And it's going to be great.
That one.
And
Everyone freaks
then,
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of mundane. But then you've got somebody with this whimsical imagination being like, oh my gosh, I can realize my dreams and share them with people.
Yeah. I had written that down too. It just said he was super experimental. Like, he invented so many of the tricks. And there's one called the stop trick, which is just a substitution trick. And it said one time his camera just accidentally jammed in the middle of a take, and a bus changed into a hearse and women changed into men. And he just claimed it as his own and was like,
Right.
this is
And
the
you're like,
stop
oh.
trick.
So it's just like
Dang.
anytime it kind of like stops and cuts and like a person turns into a puff of smoke, that kind of
Exactly. Yeah. And so then he started using it intentionally after he saw what it looked like in the end.
Right. And like, I love that trick is like still used all the time. Like, I mean, obviously all of those like magic Vine stars or whatever are basically
totally,
just
like,
doing that.
Right. Yeah,
Right,
just lots of amateur filmmaking stuff.
Right.
Totally is that kind of thing. Yeah.
And Kurosawa actually did that a lot because I've been going through a lot of his films. And I guess we won't ever get a chance to cover this one specifically on this podcast, but the film A Hidden Fortress, 1958, was when he was starting to experiment with like widescreen film and starting to have like his samurai films have like more gunfire in them, which has been kind of interesting. But there's like these shots where they're like running behind a, you know, this like barrier, and then they stop, and then you can see the cut as they're just like shooting a bunch of bullets into it, and then it cuts back and they get up and they run. And they do that a few times in a row. But like the stop trick, even like in 1958 when Akira Kurosawa was doing it, doesn't look that much smoother or cleaner
No, that's what I was thinking.
than what Méliès was doing in
like
1902.
even in this, like you can tell it's there, but overall, like it's pretty like smooth.
Yeah.
Like as far as the position of the actors and everything, like there's not a huge change or anything. Like they kept it pretty as seamless as they could, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Surprisingly so for the time. Yeah. Because I've tried doing stuff with the stop trick before.
it's hard.
Like, it's not easy at all.
Yeah.
And they
it
probably
always
didn't
looks
have
bad.
too many tries, right, with film.
Right.
Right.
You're using up a physical
Yeah.
resource. Yeah.
Because
Had to
also
get it
just
right in one try.
really expensive, and you
Yeah.
have very small reels at the time, so you can only shoot for a certain amount of time. Yeah, which I think is, I mean, I guess it depends on the era of film, but it probably like they're probably going through multiple rolls just for that, you know, which is just crazy to think about. Because at the moment with digital cameras, what we have now, just like even consumer grade products, you can record on like a DSLR for 30 minutes, and then you could just have to hit record again, then it does it another 30 minutes,
Right.
and it's just a, you know, infinite resource.
Yeah. It says his longest film was 40 minutes.
Oh.
So I'd be curious to see
Dang.
what that one's like.
Yeah, I wonder when he made that one. That would have been,
Probably later.
yeah.
Like, it said through 1913.
Okay, so I guess there are some films from the 1910s that are worth watching.
True.
At least
Oh,
a
well.
few, maybe.
And he
Gotta be
started
something.
filming. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
He started filming in the theater he bought, and then he moved into the greenhouse building. And it was glass walls, glass ceiling, because he wanted as much sunlight.
Mm.
And it said he just kind of approached it like people did with photography studios, but then he would just build all of the sets in there. And he built it with the same dimensions as the theater he was filming in before. So
That's really interesting.
I know.
So it was all like mostly natural lighting. That's another thing I like didn't think about at all that I would have to
Yeah,
think
that's
about.
true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, I love it because we watched Hugo growing
This
up.
is what made me think
And
of,
they
yeah.
totally recreate the whole set in that building, and now I have a greater appreciation for it. But I remember the scenes in that movie where they show the actors and him stopping to do the tricks, and they stop filming and he runs in with the smoke bomb, and then he's like, action, and then they go and the actor falls over, runs out or something, like, because then they can just splice it.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah, see, I think I took like a very early film class, and then I watched A Trip to the Moon. And then after that, I watched Hugo, and I remember being so shocked. I was like, "Wait, that's the thing that I know."
Right.
And that they brought Méliès.
Yeah,
It was
like it sneaks it in there.
Yeah.
It's like you don't know that's what it's about at first, and then it's like, oh, by the way, this is like a little bit historical, actually, about a real person. Like,
That was
what?
so cool.
Super interesting.
That was the first I'd heard of him. Yeah,
Mhm,
I've seen
me
that a
too.
few times. It's very cool.
I definitely want to rewatch that movie now. It's
Yeah.
probably
Me
my
too.
favorite Scorsese movie.
It's so
Which
good.
is
Very good.
probably a bad take, depending on who you are, but like
No.
I think that's
It's just-
probably my favorite one.
We
It's
just
very
need to watch more
different from
Scorsese
everything else
movies.
he's done.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like none of us have like actually watched like his core movies, I feel like.
Yeah, that's true.
Like his ones that are like the most well known as like Scorsese movies. Like
Right.
none of us have
Like,
seen those ones.
I've watched Silence. I've watched The Last Temptation of Christ. I can't.
Mhm.
Have I seen anything else other than Hugo?
think
Probably
so.
not. Yeah.
Neither of
I
you have
mean,
watched
like-
Shutter Island?
No, we
No.
still haven't seen that. Even that I wouldn't. I mean, that one's closer, I guess, but I don't know. I feel
That's
like his
my
like
favorite.
gangster movies are like Goodfellas
Yeah.
Right.
and Taxi Driver and stuff are like
Yeah.
his big ones, and like
Yeah.
I haven't.
I feel like
gotten
King of
there.
Comedy gets talked about more since
It's
Joker's come
true.
out.
Right.
but-
Yeah, that one kind of got new life.
Yeah.
I want to see them
Yeah.
because
Right.
I do like his movies. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I saw The Irishman, which is probably the closest thing, but like that's too new, and I'm not gonna count that as like something major for him. I guess it was very good though, but like, so I feel like I can say I like his stuff, but yeah, I just haven't gotten around to the old ones.
To the core Scorsese. Well,
Yeah.
Goodfellas is on this list, so we will
True.
get to that one
That's true.
in 1990. So at the moment, at
It's a ways
1902,
down the
it's
list.
it's a ways away.
Yeah.
But I think based off of the list, which by the way you can find audience on
Yes.
on Letterboxd, we have the list up there, and if you go to our website movieoverloadpod.com, we have the list up there as well.
Yes. Or there's a
Um,
link to it at least.
Yeah,
at the
right.
top.
Mhm. So you can see all the different movies that we have on there. But I think the largest based off of decade, I think the one with the most movies is actually the 90s, which surprised me because I feel like of all the recent decades, it's probably the one that I've like had the least interest in. But as we were constructing the list, it became apparent that like, you know, Pulp Fiction, Goodfellas, all the big movies that people tend to talk about, at least now, that are
Mhm.
very culturally relevant for like film buffs or whatever, tend to be from that era. So,
Mhm. That's true.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
a lot of the ones that kind of stay in people's minds right now in pop culture stuff. Yeah, it's definitely like 80s, 90s
mm-hmm.
kind of stuff.
But you know, I was surprised at the number of really good foreign films from the 2000s that are worth watching. So there's also quite a few from that era as well. But you know, the goal of the podcast is not just to do those like film buff,
Mhm.
you know, movies. Is to also do a lot more of different movements, and to cover a lot more foreign films that aren't normally talked about in those lists, because I've run into a lot of 100 essential films lists and whatever that are just like, here's some 6 Tarantino films and 5 Christopher Nolan films, and we'll just throw in a couple of Hitchcocks there, and not even having like Ozu or Kurosawa or, you know, any of the great Japanese films. So so that's the hope, is to get through a lot of those major ones, and by the end of the podcast there'll be more I guess general knowledge of film and its progression. As you know, that was a very, I guess, subtle segue into talking about what the point of the podcast is
Right,
again.
yeah, we
But
kind of
Yeah,
back
man.
around to it. That's what I was thinking we should do. Is like we feel like
Yeah.
we should probably do a more clear kind of
Mhm.
representation of what it is, and that's basically it.
Mhm.
And we should probably also specify that you made the list.
I did
after
make the
seeing
list, but I had help.
After seeing a bad list.
We didn't even say our names.
I did see a
I
bad
was gonna
list,
say
yeah.
we didn't introduce ourselves. Yeah.
Reese is in
Did
the
we not?
corner if you can't
Okay.
see him.
I'm Reese.
I am Hannah.
And I'm Hunter.
Rad. Okay.
Woo.
Well, this was kind of a test run.
Yeah.
Now we kind of know, you know, how
Right.
we do this, and future episodes we'll start to see a little bit more structure come in there. But is there anything else we want to say? Do we want to give a rating to
Ooh.
this?
Yes.
And should we rate the questions I was thinking was like a rating on a scale of like our personal enjoyment of the film, or more
Mm.
like how much we think it belongs on this list, how influential we feel like it is?
Yeah, I mean, we can kind of cover the different aspects of it, because that's kind of, I mean, part of that's subjective, and part of it's also just like, it's here because we thought it was,
Right.
you know, very influential. So,
Mm-hmm.
And
and I
I
mean,
think
I
it
feel like we
was.
kind of discussed that too, where it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, it's like this thing kind of set the stage for
Mm-hmm.
many things to come, and it did it really early.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Man.
I don't know. At least for me, I'm like, yeah, totally. Like, I think this was definitely a good choice, and it's important to see and understand. But I enjoyed it.
Mhm.
It wasn't like the greatest thing I've ever seen. I'm not gonna like watch it all the time, but it was fun.
It was.
I like
yeah.
it.
I'm gonna watch this every day from now
Yeah.
on. You don't even
It
know.
has changed my life.
Right.
I can't fall asleep without watching A Trip to the Moon from 1902.
Oh man.
Very important.
I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. I really appreciated all his theatrical elements that he added in the creativity, just because I never think innovatively like that. It was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as somebody who's watched, a decent amount of silent films, I was still kind of blown away by this, and I feel like in comparison to, pretty much everything from this era, this really does stand out as being one of the most, like, visually arresting and just impressive works of film that I've seen.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I don't know, the small bits of slapstick comedy were somewhat effective for me,
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Like, you
Those
just
are
chuck
really good.
something at a guy and we're all three of us are just laughing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was good. I'd watch it again a few more times, I
Mhm.
think.
Me too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is like if there was like the first version we pulled up was like in color,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't end up watching it because it had like this weird narration over it. That was weird.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think he
I
did
would-
color his films
right.
later.
I was gonna say like I would watch a version in color
Mhm.
just to kind of see like what kind of if that changed the experience, because sometimes it was kind of hard to pick stuff out.
Right.
And, I don't know. I would try
Yeah.
different versions of it.
When you say that he colored his films, do you mean like he was like on like the celluloid or whatever? Like he's like literally drawing like color onto it, or?
I just remember reading that it said something about he was hand coloring certain films, because I don't think that the films that he has available in color now, it wasn't the actual color of what things were. He was coloring them in like really bright, crazy colors.
Gotcha. Huh.
Yeah, which I
Dang.
think just added to the overall
Yeah.
fantasy side of what he was doing.
That sounds like a lot of work too, though. That's
Oh, yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
So much time.
Yeah. Well,
And I
that'd be
think he
fun to
also
watch,
had
too.
a little rivalry with Thomas Edison.
Mm.
Thomas Edison, I guess, was involved in some film tricks and working with cameras, which I actually didn't really know a lot about. And it
I think
just
he
said
invented
that-
the film camera, didn't he?
Did he?
I thought he.
Am
I
I
thought
just
he did.
stupid?
Don't.
I'm just stupid then.
No.
No.
I have no idea.
I can remember. I
I
know
think of some of
Edison
the early
and the light
films
bulb, and
being
that's about it.
Edison. Yeah.
I guess just studying film as an actor, I don't hear about anyone talk about Thomas Edison or like
Right.
these just initial historic movements in film.
Right.
And so reading about that and just how they were a little competitive, I guess, and like who could come up with those tricks first
Mm-hmm.
was a big deal, which I thought was kind of cool.
That is really interesting. Yeah. I think when I have to think back because it was like probably 8 years ago that I took that early film class. But I think some of the early stuff we had to watch is like Edison, like,
Mm.
you know, the horse. Have you ever
Mm.
seen that, like, just really short film of just like a horse galloping?
Oh,
from the
yeah,
side?
yeah.
I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
'cause
that's
that was the
Edison.
thing.
That was him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
So I think he, I mean, I don't know. We're talking about Thomas Edison, so there's a chance that he like half stole some of these inventions or whatever. But
Maybe.
at least I think
True.
he's credited with some of the earliest examples of film. But that is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know what to give it. Five
No.
stars.
Five
No, I was thinking,
stars.
like I feel like I could give it like a 4.5.
Yeah.
Just 'cause between like a combination of personal enjoyment and like for what this was doing at the time, it's
Mhm.
really impressive and cool. And I don't know if I were to go just off personal enjoyment though, it's probably like a 4.
That's fair.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't like, I didn't laugh and cry and
Mhm.
experience every human emotion at the same
Right.
time within
Yeah.
the 12-minute span. But it
Yeah, which can happen.
Weird.
it can. It certainly can.
That's fair.
Because I mean, PTA's Anima is like around the same length, and dang, that thing is great. But it's got music, to be
Right.
fair. Yeah.
Yeah, but like again, for what this was doing, like I don't know if you could do a better job at the time
Mhm.
of what he was doing, and like it's really cool. It's just nice and different to see something out of our time, I guess.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's cool.
I'd
Yeah.
give it 4.5 stars, only docking a half star because the man in the moon scared me so bad. He was freaky.
It was really freaky.
You could
It
see
was
like the
weird
sludge
looking.
on his face after the bullet went in his eye. Like they
Yeah.
actually dumped something on his head.
I
must
remember
It's kind of
rough.
disturbing.
I remember like
Mhm.
just seeing that footage and stuff in Hugo and being
Mhm.
like, oh, I wonder if that's the conflict of the movie. Is that they shot the moon and now the moon is sad. And like the
He
moon
was
would
so
be like
sad.
a character. And it's
Oh.
not.
Oh.
They just shoot his eye out,
Nobody cares
and then
about
move
the
on.
moon. Yeah.
And then they're
That's really
fighting all the
sad.
aliens that are
There's aliens.
in the moon. Don't you also love that the bullet hits the moon and it's like half the size of the moon?
Yeah.
And then it shows them on the moon and it's super
It's
little
really
and there's all these
small, it's
people
just
on
like-
it.
Mhm.
Yeah. It was,
Yeah. I
it was
mean,
a fun shot though. Still, like,
It was really
yeah,
good.
it's one of the most iconic things
Mhm.
in silent films, I guess,
Mhm.
really. But it's funny because like it's such an iconic image, while at the same time, no one cares about what happened to that moon.
Literally.
Poor guy.
Poor moon.
Half
Because he was
blind
scary,
now.
I'm telling you.
Yeah,
He's freaky.
that's fair. Maybe if they chose a bit more attractive of a moon to
Mhm.
play the moon, then people would
I
care
agree.
more.
Could get
I
more
agree.
sympathy.
Maybe we should remake it with Ryan Gosling as
Oh
the
my
moon.
gosh.
Oh my gosh,
Maybe
I would
then-
love that.
Maybe then we'll get some
Uh,
sympathy for the moon.
I would feel so bad for his eye.
Like you have like this whole like big movie, because it would of course be very like high budget, insane, and then you just have Ryan Gosling there just as the face of the moon, and that's it.
He's gone in 2 seconds.
That's the
Mhm.
best like big actor cameos that
They'd
are on
have to
screen for 2
recreate it though with the
seconds.
pulley again. They're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Ryan Gosling, sit down, and they like throw a
Like,
cloak over him. They
okay.
paint him with some weird moon paint, and they're just pulling him towards the camera. Okay, act like you're in pain. I think it would work.
He'd
that's
probably
great.
he'd probably give a good performance.
He probably would.
Mhm.
Knowing him, what a legend.
What
Is he in
what an
anything that we're
icon.
covering? I don't think he's in any movie that we're talking about, which feels
Yeah.
weird. Because I love Blade Runner 2049.
I was gonna say
I
Blade Runner,
almost-
but we're watching the old one.
Yeah, we're watching
Yeah.
the first one.
We can like
Mm,
sneak in a little bit of discussion about 2049 when we watch the original.
there we go.
Okay.
We'll have some Gosling conversation.
I can slip him
Post
into
this.
any conversation if you really want me to.
We'll see how it goes for the first few silent films and see if you find some good segues for,
Okay,
for Ryan Gosling.
for Ryan
and all
Gosling,
that.
that'll be my shtick.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of,
My name is
You
Hannah,
did,
and I
like-
love Ryan Gosling.
Speaking
Thank
of
you.
movies,
do we have any like classic musicals that we can do? And
mm,
I don't know if we're doing
Talk
anything
about
like that.
to talk
And
about
then
La
be
La
like,
Land.
anyway, La La Land.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Like a
I'll
cool
definitely
Ryan
bring
Gosling
up La La
movie.
Land.
What are we doing?
And Roman Holiday.
Music, Roman Holiday.
Roman
Oh,
Holiday
yeah.
associates with La La Land. I'll
True.
definitely nerd out
Interesting.
about that.
There you
Mhm.
go.
Singing in the Rain.
There's
Oh
ways.
man, I love that movie.
Singing
There's a
in
lot
the
of good
Rain.
movies on this list. I mean, I guess that's kind of the point of
That
the
was the
list, but you
plan.
know, I'm really
I
excited.
mean, there was going to be at least one mediocre movie that
That's
was still
true.
notable, and now it's not.
Did we
What was the
replace it?
mediocre
I
movie?
think because you were going to replace it with something.
We were gonna
like-
do. Were we gonna do Blair Witch, and then we chose to replace
Oh.
it with something else?
That might be too.
Oh
So
yeah,
you
we
took-
also
you took
replaced.
Cleopatra
We were
off.
gonna do the Cecil B. DeMille's like 1934 Cleopatra,
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking.
and then
and then you took it off. I think.
yeah, it just didn't.
Did you replace it with King Kong?
I think I replaced it with King Kong.
Okay.
Yeah, which I guess I've heard is and it seems to
Right.
get better reviews anyway. So
Yeah.
it probably makes more sense to have on the list. Anyway, I'm gonna have to write that report. That's gonna be a time.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Indeed. Anyway, we'll figure all that out.
Mm-hmm.
We've mostly figured it out.
Yeah.
We did not plan this at all before we started recording.
We probably could have done a little bit more.
It's okay.
More
Trial run.
Now we know.
Yeah.
Though.
pilot
we know how
episode.
it
got-
works.
Sometimes the first episode
The-
just kind of has to be rough.
Yeah, the point is,
now we
it's
know.
true.
if you don't listen to this podcast, you're lame.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly. Because you didn't have faith that we would improve.
Yeah, exactly.
Come back in 10 episodes and
Oh wait,
hear
but
us
you
when we're
should.
better.
I'm really
But
excited
also-
about the
No, wait.
Metropolis episode at
Right.
least.
I was gonna say that's like the fun thing about this is like you can just like pop in and listen if you just want to hear specific movie coverage,
Mhm.
but also like it's just a fun sequence of like the evolution of things over time. Hopefully,
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
we've
since
got
you know what we're covering
personality.
next, you can also watch
Yeah.
it with us.
we've
Oh my
spoiled the whole
gosh.
thing on the internet.
Exactly. You know the entire run
Yeah,
of episodes. Although I guess we might change a few things here
Right.
and there
if we
but
feel like we need to.
if,
Yeah,
if we really want to. What's
But
the
mostly
next?
it'll
What's
be-
next week's episode?
I do not remember.
I'm pretty sure you're the one doing the report on
I
that
believe
one.
I
see?
am.
Come on, Hunter.
Come on.
I'm gonna pull up the
Yeah,
list on
that's-
I'm
I'm
gonna
Letterboxd.
expect so much
Get
from
to it
you.
when I get to it. Hannah's gonna find it.
I'm gonna find it. It's gonna be amazing. Wait for it.
I'm excited.
Hmm.
I'm really excited to do at
Next
least
one.
most of the things.
Oh, I'm excited about this one. It's The General.
Oh yeah, you're doing
right.
Buster Keaton because you
Yeah.
actually have seen
I've
Buster
actually
Keaton
seen,
films
I
before.
haven't seen that one, but I saw a couple in my class, and I
1926.
really liked them. They're really
Nice.
funny. Like they're really fun.
Well, that sounds like a good time.
80
then.
minutes.
Again, a good evolution of silent
See.
film,
Mhm.
to where you're getting like probably at least from the ones I saw, like there's maybe some dialogue and like actually identifiable characters, but all still like really just heavy reliance on physical performance and comedy and stuff.
Right.
So
Yeah.
of course that's kind of the whole nature of that. But
It's the entire. I mean, that's just Buster Keaton,
Right.
and Charlie Chaplin. I guess
Yeah.
are both pretty slapsticky.
Totally.
But the thing
Most
about
standouts, yeah.
Chaplin that I'm curious to see if Buster Keaton does as well is Chaplin films are like funny and have a lot of ridiculous stuff going on,
Mhm.
but they also like try to make you like emotionally moved at
Right.
the same
Mm.
time.
yeah.
Um,
I don't know about this one. I guess the
We'll
ones that
see.
I saw definitely were not that way. Like I think they were really just primarily focused on the comedy and
Right.
kind of these insane situations.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, not really anything emotional happening.
Fair. Well, I'm excited to watch it. I guess that'll be our first full length film
Indeed. Yeah.
of the
Oh,
pod.
is it?
So
How long is it? I haven't seen any
It's
like really
80
long
minutes.
ones.
80 minutes.
Oh
yeah.
wow!
Mhm.
All the ones I saw were like 30 minutes or less. I think.
Yeah.
Cool.
Gotcha.
I don't think I've ever seen a
Okay,
Charlie
so-
Chaplin film either.
I haven't either.
I
Yeah.
that would be
I should
really
watch
fun.
those.
I have one on the list.
Okay.
But unfortunately, and I guess not unfortunately, I feel like it's still kind of a good pick, but it's actually not a silent film. It's what I think his only like just like straight dialogue film. It's from
Interesting.
1940. It's called The Great Dictator.
Yes,
And
I
he's
have
just-
heard of that.
He's just spoofing on Hitler for
Nice.
a whole hour. Or
I can
an
see
hour
it.
and a half.
I can see that.
Yeah, right, because he's like iconic for having the exact same mustache
Same
as
mustache,
Hitler.
yep.
So like, yeah, I'm glad he at least commented on that at some point. Of whoops, I guess Hitler copied me and then did some real bad stuff.
Oops.
Oopsie.
So that'll be a fun one to get to. But
Yep.
I don't know, maybe we could do some like side episodes here and there to talk about adjacent films.
Bonus
Yeah.
episode.
Maybe.
Yeah, bonus episodes. Man, I guess we should start that Patreon
Oops.
now, shouldn't we?
Yeah, man.
Oh,
Woof.
hey, now we have a way to
Yeah.
just make a Blade Runner 2049 episode.
Exactly.
Oops.
We'll do
Hmm.
3 full episodes and then instantly launch a Patreon, and then from there, we'll just let this fall by the wayside as we
Right.
we talk about other movies.
Exactly. And then we can do La La Land.
hmm
Aha.
That would be great. Yeah, we could do that would be kind of fun to go through like our favorite movies as
Mhm.
well, like on the
I would
side
totally
of
do
like
that.
Especially
going
like
through each
just
of our top
if they
10s or whatever.
relate to other stuff. Yeah.
hmm That would be good.
fun.
Anyway,
Anyway.
that's what we got. I think this time. This is
End it for
probably
real.
a good end of an episode.
Oof,
But
yeah,
let's see.
over
Do
you.
we got things to plug? I think, right? We got our
Guess so.
our website is movieoverloadpod.com.
Yep.
We've also got the Gmail if you want to send us a mail thing.
Indeed.
Send us mail. We're lonely.
That could be fun. Do we also have social medias, right?
We have
We do.
social media. We're Movie Overload Pod on Instagram.
Mhm. Is it movie overload _ on Twitter?
I believe so because
There's
I
links
couldn't
to all
do
these
Movie
on the
Overload
website, too.
Pod.
Cool beans.
It was
The
too
website
long.
links to everything.
Yeah, we're Movie Overload _ on Twitter. Yes,
Awesome.
good job, Hunter.
Mhm.
Winner.
Cool. Well, then I guess those are the things.
Yep.
I've been Reese, and you've been Hannah,
I have been Hannah.
and you over there.
I have been and will continue to be Hunter.
Yes.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Wow.
Wow.
I stole
feel
that from
moved.
someone else.
That's
I don't know how to speak into the microphone also, so I apologize.
I know. I'm sorry.
it'll take some
I feel like
time.
I was probably all over the place.
Yeah. Well, it's fine. I think we're about to get a new
Yeah.
recording like a recording
It's real
implement.
jank right now. It's
Yeah.
gonna not be.
We'll be
Jank.
able to actually hear ourselves, which will be nice. We'll be able to ditch these microphones. Well, some of these microphones eventually, hopefully, if anybody wants to help me buy.
I should
new
just buy
microphones.
one. I feel like I
Hint,
would
hint.
be able to make use of one
I think so.
in the future, just at least for personal things.
We're
Yeah,
starting that
so I should just
Patreon
get one.
page now.
Huh.
Please fund us.
With
Chick-fil-A
that,
and equipment.
if you give us $100 a month, we'll be able to buy a new microphone, and you might be able to hear the difference.
I beg you.
Maybe.
Please.
Cool beans. Well, that was the time.
Yep.
It's an episode. Thank y'all for joining. And as we say here at the end of every episode of Movie Overload podcast.
That was a line from the movie.
Nice. Okay.
What?
That one,
I thought that was what we had said we were gonna do.
that was a line from the movie. Yep. But there were no lines to this movie.
Exactly. I'm sorry, I cheated at my way out of that one.
Bad humor, bad humor.
That was pretty great.
No,
Well,
I
okay.
liked it. I support it.
I'm gonna fumble my way through that in the future when we have actual lines to quote from the movie.
That was
and
a
I'm
line
gonna
from the movie.
I'm gonna be like, were there lines in this movie? But then I'll figure it out.
Fantastic.
And make people doubt themselves when they watch this.
Mm.
Like, where's that line?
I don't remember that was a line
Dang
from
it.
the movie. I
Where
watched
is
the
it?
entire
Oh, man.
13 minutes without seeing any
Yeah.
dialogue at all, but apparently
seeing
that was a
any
line
dialogue?
from the movie, was a line from this
So
movie.
confused.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, we're done.
If we haven't already stopped recording, I'm just going to fade it out.
Okay.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it didn't happen. None of this happened.
Bye.
This is all falsehood.